Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show on Off the Ball, brought to you by Boyle Sports. For all the best prices, go to offtheball.com/Boyle Sports. It's been another unbelievable week in hurling and it's hard not to feel a little bit superior about it. Here to wax lyrical with me is Niall Corcoran, former Dublin hurler, former Galway underage star, might I say star?
Maybe not star, no, maybe not go that far, but we'll take the Dublin bit anyway.
Yeah, Kilmacud Croke star, former Air Court star.
Former Air Court star, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also joining us over Skype as well is current star manager Jamie Wall. How are you doing, Jamie?
Well, Shane, how are you?
Not too bad. Good. First of all, which game did you prefer from the weekend? Cork, Limerick or Galway, Clare?
Well, actually, I was into both of them, but coming out of the Galway Clare game, I was saying surely Sunday won't be as good, but I actually think it was a better game. Purely just from entertainment point of view, but the scores, just, it was non-stop. Like, where else would you rather be? You know, yeah. Phenomenal stuff.
Jamie, which game did you prefer?
Probably the Cork Limerick one. I maybe had more of a vested interest there, just more of a connection to the lads involved, and so I was a bit more kind of emotionally involved in that one than the Galway Clare one. I know I had a cousin playing for Clare, but I kind of just obviously the Cork connection and the few Limerick lads and stuff, and it was just I was cheering scores on both sides. I didn't really know what was going on. There was people beside me kind of saying, "This fella hasn't a clue what's going on here," like, but. I was just like, it was just one of those real absorbing contests from start to finish, whereas I suppose there was that small bit of a lull in the Clare-Galway game for the first 15-20 minutes, where you weren't really sure what was going to transpire. I suppose I was kind of feeling a small bit foolish about my bullish prediction last week that Clare would give them enough of it, and I was kind of saying, this fella isn't going to let me hear the end of this now when I go back and speak to him. But so I know I probably marginally declare the Limerick Cork game, but I mean, like Niall said, like, it's impossible to kind of, it's like asking you which child you prefer, like, you know.
Yeah, I found I'm a complete neutral with these, but I found myself just cheering on the scores when Aaron Shanahan got his goal to bring it alive. I let a little roar out of me like a child. That was great stuff. What's the best game you've ever played in?
Well, look, there's been two. Look at the Kilkenny Dublin game in 2012. It was 5-16 to 6-12.
Yeah.
That was just insane down in Nolan Park. Remember that day I think we in a half time 3-8 to 1-9 up, and I think we came out and Dottie scored a goal, and we were thinking, here we go now, but like Richie Power and Richie Hogan came through and scored an unbelievable goal that day. I'll never forget it. I think I ended up full back, which not a great place to be when you're on Richie Power. But it was just kind of a mad game, and probably the Galway game in the same league. Playing with 13 players. Ryan Dwyer got another red, and
that would be very unlike Ryan.
Very unlike Ryan, all right, Shane. And Alan McCrabb, I think, got the line as well. So we ended up with 13.
Very unlike Alan as well.
Yeah, it would be. I won't comment that, lad, to let you work away. But it was just mad stuff, and drew the game. Lost the replay, obviously, but there were great games to play. And looking back on now, but at the time you're kind of so engrossed in the game, you don't realise what you've played in until afterwards.
Jamie, the beautiful thing about this is that we're getting unbelievable games, even though, like, the last few years, some of the most amazing games we got involved Tipperary and Kilkenny. Even last year it was involving Waterford, and none of these teams are around. Like, Dublin had a classic this year against Kilkenny as well. So Jamie, there's such a good spread there at the moment.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, the standard it's just gone up a major notch. Like, and I think, even like when we got to quarter-final stage, you could comfortably say that we had 5 of the 6 best teams in the country involved where you want them. Like, I think maybe Wexford are a small bit off that mark, and I think that's just a byproduct of, you've got 2 teams in Leinster at the same level, and then you probably have 4 teams in Munster this year that were all at that level with each other. And I mean, but to have, I suppose that's what you want in a competition. You want everyone to get games, but you want, at the end of it all, you want the teams that are playing the best stuff to be thereabouts, and to see that spread. And I suppose you're just buzzing that you've got 4 teams that are more or less all on an even keel in the semi-final, and that's why you've got games like you have here.
So just to focus on the Limerick and Cork match the other day, Cork were brilliant for the game, 6 points up coming down the final stretch. I felt that a couple of refereeing decisions went against Cork at that stage. There was once or twice Paul O'Dwyer could have given frees to Cork. They could have bolstered it to 7 points or maintained a 6-point lead. Am I being harsh pointing to that, giving excuses to Cork?
Look, I don't know. I suppose they'll argue that maybe before Cian Lynch's goal that there was a foul on Daniel Carney and it was a push in the back. So look, that would have been a turning point. But I think Paddy Dwyer really let the game go on Sunday. And what can you say? I was so impressed with Limerick from 6 down coming back and having Horgan to come up and get an equalising score to bring the game to extra time. You'd have to say that Cork kind of while they got the goal, they never threatened compared to Limerick had always chances inside to take on goals. Like Aaron Gallan maybe could have 3-6 scored. So there was space in there for Limerick to get those chances, whereas Cork were picking off scores all day, but not that threatening inside.
Jamie, I felt that, I wonder why were the Cork players dropping like flies? When I watched the game back, I felt that Limerick backs, they put in a fair few reducers on these Cork forwards. You saw Harnedy didn't finish the game, he came back on, as did Daniel Carney. Darragh Fitzgibbon didn't finish the game either. And they ended up bringing on 3 subs that are 6'3", 6'4", whereas they had pace before. Cork very much slowed down during extra time and they couldn't keep with Limerick.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was noteworthy, and I suppose there are mitigating circumstances. Like we talked last week about Seamus Hardys was carrying a knock into the game, and you could see that. I think it's been said alright that he probably had no business coming back onto the field for extra time, just in the sense that he had given to the cause all he had, and I think look, there's no one more honest than Shamey. Like he's captain of Cork, he's gonna go out, but I think somebody maybe needed to just pull rank and just say, look, you're not really in a fit state to go out. As far as Daniel Carney and Darragh Fitzgibbon, I think it was just a byproduct of the sheer work that they had put in. You saw the ground the two of them covered over the course of the hour. But I suppose it comes back to, and again, look, we talked about it last week on OTB AM, myself and Owen Shane, we were wondering, what is the perfect formula? Is it, the game by game, week on week, and then Limerick went into kind of a game every 2 weeks and leading into this game? Or is it Cork who maybe, had this longer break and they had this 5-week break? And look, I'm not making excuses or anything like that, but it is probably just something that we do need to get the balance of right a small bit, because, if you just play 5 weeks without a championship game, everyone knows championship's a different pace to anything you can do, to anything you can manage. And I suppose Limerick were just at that pitch of championship every 2 weeks, which is probably the ideal kind of gap between games, because you have a week to come down and a week to build back up again. Whereas Cork were after that 5-week break after winning a Munster title, that maybe it's just a case of it's impossible to get that match pitch perfect, and I suppose then suffered because of it when the game went to extra times,
Yeah, and I wonder about, Seamus Hardys said that he had a different injury than the one that was coming into the game, and when you were asked, are you able to go back out? We had a league match last week, and during the first half I realised I'm actually quite sick here, and I nearly got sick about 4 times on the field, and at half time I was doubled over, but of course I said, oh yeah, I'm grand to play on. I wasn't, but you feel like you have to say it. So is that a stage where a manager has to step in and say, look, you're limping, you just can't be bringing
I think Jamie made a great point there. It's down to somebody making that call and saying, look, it's time to come off here. And it was very obvious. I think he picked up a dead leg and he just literally couldn't cover the ground. And it kind of, when you look at it from maybe a manager's point of view, you're playing a ball inside there, and is there an option in there to go for someone to chase the ball? There probably wasn't. And going back to Jamie's point about the balance of games, I think it's important going forward, maybe looking at that in terms of how you get that balance right. Look, I know when in 2013 when the Leinster we had 5 games in a row, we were absolutely on fire, and then 5-week layoff to play Cork in an Ireland semi-final. And look, while it was a good game, you're still kind of shaking off the cobwebs a bit. So it was a factor, but you can't look past the Limerick bench and the impact they had in that game. I think it was phenomenal. Yeah, and actually, because Limerick went through the whole of the league without their Na Piarsaigh players, they got promotion, and then they're able to bring back the quality in Na Piarsaigh. Because if those guys were there from the start of the year, the likes of Peter Casey, Will Donovan came in, Shane Dowling obviously came in and went to town. What an advantage for John Kiely that his players, minus their county champions, were able to win promotion, and now he's just able to unload them every day. Oh, look, it's class, and Kevin Downs never got on the pitch, as well. So
And David Dempsey wasn't in the squad. I'm not sure if he was injured, but
yeah, look, I think they're by far the squad with the strength and depth, and even looking, we'll talk about Galway in a second, and the cover they have at the back, but they could. Limerick brought on Seamus Hickey. I think Tom Condon to come back on. They've Richie English. They've these kind of quality players to come back in, as well as what we saw Sunday with Shane Dowling and Peter Casey and Pat Ryan. So I think with the format, the way it's gone, I think the squad is important, and I think Limerick has shown that this year, especially on Sunday, and the way they use it so well.
And Jamie, you work in the Limerick Club Championship as well. Can you tell us about the strength of this panel? And there's probably even players that we haven't seen yet that can make an impact.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy the strength is there. I mean, like you said there, you spoke about Shane and Peter Casey, will say coming off the bench, and these are the kind of guys that in the club championship, you're kind of going in to play them, and you're making plans for them, because you're saying that's how strong they are, and they're coming in. But look, Shane kind of had a bit of he asked for a bit of calm, and then he gave a rousing speech last Sunday. It was funny, but he made a point, and he made a great point, that he was hoping he gave John Kiely something to think about. But I think if anything, what he's done is, unfortunately for him maybe, is that he's really solidified in John Kiely's head that this is the way forward, almost that Kevin McMenamin type player, that when he comes in, when the bodies are a small bit tired, that his class is just so much that he's able to take advantage and punish, and what an option for Limerick there. At one stage, Shane Dowling had just come on the field, and there was a free out in their own 65, and rather than having to lose their shape and Aaron Gillan having to come the whole way out to the field, John Kiely, I was looking down at him, he was saying in to Aaron, and just like, oh Shane, you hit that, because you're out here anyway, you hit that and we'll keep our shape. And it just, to have two free takers at the level that they're at, even even that alone, before you get into the impact that they've had from play, Pat Ryan scoring a goal, the lads scoring, even just to come into that kind of, without even talking about that impact, the fact that you've got a free taker coming onto the field who's every bit as good as the free taker you have, who's probably one of the best free takers in the country. It's just crazy depth that they have. They have, like you said, I think it was 2-6 they got off the bench the last day compared to 3 points that Cork got. So that's not having a go at Cork or anything like that, but it's just calling it as it is, that Limerick just got so much from their bench, and so much in terms of, even we'll say, obviously I'm working with Graham Mulcahy in Kilmallock now, and he's having a superb year, a really superb year. And he wasn't playing badly at all. I think he'd 3 or 4 points got from play, won a free or two. But around about the 60-minute mark, they take Graham off. And you're kind of saying, okay, Graham was doing well there, but all of a sudden there's just this new injection. And it's almost like, we've got that before Graham starts to tire. We've actually just taken him off and put someone in who's as good as him and does the same job. And it's just like, to have that facility and that option is just crazy. And I think, like Niall said, they probably have the strongest depth in the panel. They'll feel a loss probably less than anyone else, and like I said, look, we're going to be talking about Galway in terms of how they're going to feel a loss potentially at the back. I think Limerick are in that position that they can actually take a loss quicker than anyone else, and a big part of that is probably Pierce's development in the club championship last year, in that it allowed John Kiely, and not even just allowed him, it actually forced his hand, in that he had to develop other leaders. He had to bring other lads into the fold, and other lads had to get tough or die, as the Johnny Cash song goes,
It's such fine margins though, because Robbie O'Flynn came on for Cork. He went into the full forward line, snapped the ball, hand passed it across to Seamus Hardys, and I felt he had to take the touch and go back in. But all of a sudden, unbelievable save from Nicky Quaid. But there was also 4 other players around him at that stage. I want to talk a little bit about Patrick Horgan. And the fact that I feel that he was playing inside and the other corner forwards are a little bit off him, and they tried to play nice ball. The idea would have been to play a nice ball in front of him, and it was incredibly tough for Mike Casey to try and keep with him, because the movement from Horgan is going to be good, but I don't feel that the ball went in enough from Cork. Would you agree that Horgan was starved of possession? Yeah, look,
he's a top class player. I've had the unfortunate pleasure of trying to track him a few times, and he's a quality player. Yeah, I kind of felt, I alluded to earlier, that kind of Limerick looked like to have the more goal chances, and whereas Cork were kind of, they're half forward line working deep in midfield, and they're working the ball to that platform and trying to get shots off. And look, for a while you could say it was working. But then you have kind of potentially two of the best forwards in the country in Horgan and Conor Lahan, who probably hurled for about 20 minutes and scored probably 2-3 or something like that. 1-3. It was phenomenal. So I think it's maybe an aspect of Cork's play. I would say they might look at going forward in terms of having a full forward line like those two lads. Plus, you can add in Seamus Hardys, you know, Alan Callaghan to come back into the fold there, and I think really when it comes down to it, I think that direct ball maybe I felt was missing from Cork's play. Now, look, was that maybe because of what Limerick had done? I'm not sure. Limerick really, you know, when you look at that middle third and you know, was fairly packed, and I think the Limerick half forwards again did play deep as well, so it can be hard sometimes to get your shots off and get your head up and play the ball in. And
Limerick are great at tackling as well, and like even Cian Lynch is probably underrated how often he gets to hurley in and flicks. Just I want to talk about the puck outs from Nicky Quaid. I thought they were exceptional, but that's all dependent on the movement as well. So he would have had his two wing forwards kind of coming in towards the middle, and then he was actually hitting bouncing a ball in front of the corner forward. The corner forward was coming out just collecting it. I mean, it's so simple. They did it against Tipperary. They've done it all year, and it just creates such easy scoring opportunities. Cork tried to do the same thing, to move their players around, move them in towards midfield, move them in narrowly, but I found that you had the wing backs Diarmuid Burns and Dan Morrissey. They were actually holding their position, and it made it a little bit tougher for Cork. Did you find that, Jamie, that Limerick's puck out strategy got them a lot of scores?
It did, yeah, definitely. And I mean, it was just something that was really noteworthy again, that over the weekend, funnily enough, you know, we talk about Galway's aerial prowess. They actually won the lowest percentage of all three teams, or of all four teams, on their puck out. I think they only won 50% of their puck out, whereas everyone else was 68, 71 and 76%. You know, so like, I mean, it's just that Limerick had 71% of their puck out, which is a serious number. It's kind of what you'd be targeting. And it's certainly something that, you know, when you look at them in the flesh, you see it way more than any game on telly, is that there's kind of organised chaos going on in their forward line when the ball's being pucked out. And I think it's something that maybe, you know, has to be accounted for in terms of when you're looking at. I know we've kind of talked about that Owen Murphy probably has the All-Star sewn up for the goal, but I think, you know, consistently delivering that level of winning on your own puck out, and then allied to what he did inside in the goal. You know, Nicky Quaid has had such a super year, but I suppose in terms of being that launch pad for so many of Limerick's attacks, but it is something that in the GA we're starting to come towards. I think, you know, I read a great article the other day about the Dubs footballers having a throw-in strategy, and kind of the headline was, anything that is guaranteed to happen should be planned for. And I suppose puck outs now, I mean, I think Wooly was going on about something about that there was 140 wides or something crazy like that, and all the scores. But I suppose the flip side of that is, if you're a good manager, you're looking at that and saying, right, that's probably an average of 50 to 55 times where our goalie's going to have the ball in his possession, and we can either try and make that 35, I suppose, attempts for us to get scores, or we can go for the 50-50 long ball puck out that, I suppose, you know, when you get to hitting that half forward line directly and high, is 50-50 by its nature. And even when you looked at Galway's stats, you know, that kind of bears that out, in that, you know, they would probably be the most direct of the three teams with their puck out, and accordingly I think they only won 25 out of 49 puck outs, whereas everyone else was around the 70% mark. So it's definitely something that's very interesting with Limerick's play. I know when you look at them that you can tell, probably more so than the other three teams, they have definitely done work on it. You know, you can tell just by looking at them, and I suppose it is a major launchpad for them.
Yeah, well, after the match I spoke with Gavin O'Mahony, who played for Limerick for a number of years there, and he was in pretty buoyant mood, as you can imagine. Anyway, so I spoke to him a couple of minutes, and here's what he had to say. Gavin O'Mahony, can you sum up what that 90 minutes was like for you?
Torture, really, until the last 5 or 6 minutes, I suppose, when we got a bit of a cushion, and I suppose that was probably the most enjoyable time I had in Croke Park. Anyway, when you get a cushion like that, and you know the game is wrapped up, that's what a feeling and what a performance, just unbelievable. And it probably improved even as the game went on. They just kind of grew in confidence, you could see, and I actually felt at full time, I felt coming out we were in the right position. We looked a bit fresher, we just looked to have a bit more kick in us, and then the subs coming on, I think, were the big difference.
So you've played with the vast majority of these players, and you've been involved with John Kiely's setup. What's been the difference this year?
They're actually, well, obviously I'm not involved this year, but last year's setup was absolutely brilliant. Training was brilliant, physical training was very good, and sometimes it just doesn't click for you. You know, it takes a bit. Now, obviously, you have the group that are coming through are a year older. They've gotten maybe most of them gotten 2 or 3 years under a belt, and they're a brilliant group of lads. They're a group of winners, you know, from schools and Fitzgibbons and 21s. They're used to winning, which is very, very important when you're coming from a county like Limerick. You're trying to do something different and trying to break that stigma and I suppose climb Everest is what it is for Limerick at the moment, because it gets tougher and tougher every year you go without winning one. But it's amazing, a bit of momentum. I remember, like, even in 13 with Clare, they just got a bit of momentum and got games, and that's what Limerick have done. They've used so many players. They've found a couple, I suppose, a bit extra again this year, which was needed, and all the forwards are contributing. And if you've a team like that that's working hard for each other, and your forwards are all chipping in with a couple of points every game, then I don't think they'll fear whichever team comes out of the other semi-final.
And like, would you have known that a couple of these players were really going to come through and be strong players this year? Like, so Grode Hegarty mightn't have been known throughout the country. Tom Morrissey mightn't have had his greatest game today. Kyle Hayes coming, Aaron Gillan as well. Was it a case that you were kind of waiting for these guys to break onto the scene?
It was a case of finding positions from more than anything. You know, you knew they were well capable. They were plenty good enough. You just have to be patient with them and give them a chance, because, like, it is a huge step up. You know, it's the difference is massive, and I suppose the expectation that Cian Lynch burst onto the scene was playing corner forward, like not a natural corner forward, but still is expected to go out and perform there and chip in with maybe 2 or 3, and it's not as easy as that. The rest of the lads, like, the ability is there in spades. You don't go through minors and win Fitzgibbons like that, like they have done, without being really good players, and thank God they're showing it now.
What sort of manager is John Kiely? Because, you know, we see a guy who's always trying to constantly play it down, be cool, but you see him exploding on the sideline at times.
To be honest, that's like, maybe a bit of training. He'll just be very straight with you, very fair, and he'll call it as he sees it. And I think from a player, like, if you're given that much time and you're putting that much into it, all you want is someone to give it to you, just be straight with you, just man to man, and say, look, this is what you're doing, this is what you're not doing. And if you're dealing with someone like that from day to day, it becomes very enjoyable, because he's a very honest man. You know, there's nothing is held back. There's no secrets, or there's no. I'm sure the lads now that are like 24, 5 and 6 and up along on the panel, they all know something that's just catching them or holding them back. And like, if you're dealing with a man like that, then you can't really have any excuses. There's no hiding places, because, you know, right, I have to work on this, I have to improve this. And now the unfortunate thing with the games coming so quick is to try and break into that. But no, he's for the most part, he's very relaxed. He does keep it fairly calm.
A quick word about Shane Dowling. You know, he would have been a guaranteed starter for a number of years, in and out of the team this year. Has had plenty of knockers and plenty of snide comments that I've heard from people about him over the years. But how happy were you to see him come on and get 1-4, like possibly decide the game?
Yeah, I think I nearly jumped out, but he's a brilliant character. He's in both ways. You know, his personality around the place, just, he's brilliant crack. Loves to have a mess and a joke in the dressing room. But the character he's shown, like you said there's plenty of knockers. But when you look at the collection of medals he has from through club and county, it's unbelievable. Even when he came on, like, he's not overly blessed with pace or anything, but so clever and intelligent, gets himself on the ball, and is there anyone else you want the ball to fall to, and right down to the penalty. Like, I think most people in the stadium were like, tap it over, and he stood up and rifled it into the top corner, and that's the kind of character that's behind him. You know, he's a brilliant guy, and I'm delighted for him, because, as you said, there's plenty of, even locally in Limerick, there's plenty of lads there that have written him off, and we'll say this and that about him, but what a hurling man, what a stick man.
We don't know yet who the All-Ireland opponents are going to be. It's going to be Clare or Galway. But Limerick have won just 5 championship games at Croke Park since last winning the All-Ireland in 1973. Do you think they'll make it a 6th?
I do.
Yeah.
I think even today, to be fair, once I settled into the game, I could see him growing, and as we went into extra time, you couldn't but be confident behind him. I think that game is going to be massive. Now, obviously, whoever comes out of the other side, it's going to be really tough. It's Galway, battle team, really physical team. They'll be able to match Limerick's physicality, which I think Cork struggled with today. So that'll bring a different challenge. And then you have Clare, the rivalry, the whole build-up, the lead-up. That's probably going to be the most difficult part to deal with, and keep the lads grounded, just keep them, I suppose, focused. But like, what an exciting time to be from Limerick. It's unbelievable.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Niall, you saw Limerick at close quarters recently. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I happened to stumble upon a train session there with Paul Kinnerk, and I just stood back for a while, and it was phenomenal. It was basically 3 pods, and it was all based on the decision making and goal scoring. And I suppose what blew me away the most was just the intensity. It was all, 3v3, 2v2 kind of stuff. There was really no hiding. But I didn't realise how big some of those players were until you see them in the flesh. But my God, their handling skills, their touch was just phenomenal. And I think maybe you can see what Paul Kinnerk brings to Limerick in the fact of the way they've been coached. When you look back at the game, the way that they used the ball so well at times, even when they were behind, the fact that they didn't panic and were able to work scores. And look, I suppose they've just been put through that in the train sessions, and it's really, really shown on the big stage.
Jamie, you'd know plenty of these players from Mary I. Is what Niall's saying tally with what you've heard from the players?
Big time, yeah. Look, I know they're all. I even when listening to Gavin there a second ago, and he's just talking about how, it was all so good last year, but sometimes it just doesn't click, or sometimes it takes a little bit longer to click. And for me, I remember just like Niall said, seeing them at close quarters. I live down the road from the Gaelic grounds in the heart of the Pearship country here, but I went up to see them play the Munster League final against Clare. And that for me was the day that I kind of thought, I said, yeah, it looks like the penny's actually starting to drop in terms of the way they want to play. Because, I know Paul well, and I know that there's a very definite, kind of like a Guardiola kind of, he has a certain way he wants to play. He knows the way he wants his teams to play, and the teams he's involved to play. Yeah, I know. I'm putting awful pressure on him there, but what I mean in terms of a philosophical kind of. He has a very definite idea of the way he thinks that hurling should be played. Some people agree with it, some people don't, but I think the results speak for themselves. But I think, that in itself takes a small bit of time to get used to, because, for a lot of guys, it's different. It's another way to win, to paraphrase that, it's a different kind of style, in the sense of, playing that slightly shorter game at the back, working the ball out and delivering from the right area and from slightly further up the pitch. And I suppose what it does requires people to have a lot of courage and a lot of kind of comfortability on the ball. And I suppose, that in itself, I suppose, is the kind of, it's the mark of Paul, of teams Paul's involved with, and I think, like Gavin said, having that bit of time maybe to just let the penny drop has been the difference, I think. And I know the lads, last year they were only just getting to know Paul and Joe O'Connor and John, and I think that 12-month kind of bedding in period, I think it's a great thing for Limerick that, that they didn't panic, that they said, yeah, we're still on course, we have a plan, and let's stick to it and let's follow it. And I think it's no accident that this year then you see them step up that level, and again, not to labour on the Guardiola comparison, but if you look at the Premier League last year, Man City 2 years ago, you could see they're trying to do something, but they're not quite there. This year, all of a sudden, they blow teams away. Now, Limerick haven't blown people away, but by the same token, the performance level has increased dramatically,
Yeah, 100%. It's hard to argue with that. And you look at the performance, when they got knocked out last year in Nolan Park against Kilkenny, I thought Daryl Donovan looked like just another fairly good inter-county player, not amazing, but I think he's possibly the most improved player in the country this year, possibly the most underrated man.
Yeah, I think he gets a lot of credit, but I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's having a phenomenal season. I think you said to me already, when you play beside Keane Lynch, maybe it can sometimes, it's hard to maybe get that recognition, as Keane is a fine player as well. But I think Daryl Donovan is a big part of what Limerick have. But to go back to Jamie's point, I think the way they play at the moment, what I like about it the most, it's so adaptable. It's not, they can play the ball through the lines, they can switch the play, but even if the opposition throws something at them, that they're able to adapt to it, which I think is crucial at this level. And I think it comes down to the way they're being coached. And I think, as Jamie alluded to, that last year when maybe they hadn't quite got it together, they didn't panic, they stuck to it, and now you can see kind of the fruits of what they worked on.
Who is the most underrated player in the country?
I would have said to you, I would think John Hanbury is very effective for Galway cornerback, even though he mightn't always get the credit he deserves. I think Jack Brown is having a great year with Clare this year. I think I'm picking all the cornerbacks here now.
You are, yeah.
I think he's very, very effective. I think he's tight.
Richie English, Sean Finn.
Oh yeah, but they're also phenomenal stick players. Way better than I ever was as a cornerback.
You were a lovely hurler.
The left and right side, yeah. Great at hand passing the ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, look at it. I think if you take Jack Brown as an example, I think he impressed me in parts against Cork. The way he attacked the ball, the way he's using the ball. Even against Galway, I think he was picking up Conor Whelan at times and did a fantastic job. Okay, you could say that the Clare full back line were at 6s and 7s at times, but once they settled, I think they did a very, very good job. And I think Jack Brown is kind of a type of guy maybe who's always picked, be it under Davy Fitz or under the new management now with Jerry and Donald. Like he's always on the team sheet,
For sure, yeah. And I think he's come on an awful lot because he would have been known as a bit of a fouling machine a few years ago, but he's definitely come on.
He's definitely improved that aspect. That would have been probably the case, but he's definitely worked on that and improved that. So he's a fairly tough cornerback now, I think.
Yeah, and I was thinking of a few other underrated players like Ben Keneally of Offaly came to mind, Paddy Deegan with Kilkenny, although some people say too many scores come off him, but he does a lot of hurling. So I went and as I always tend to do, I did a poll on Twitter during the week to see who is the most underrated player in the hurling championship of 2018. So the options were Daryl Donovan, Limerick, who you say is quite rated anyway, Jack Brown, Paddy Foley of Wexford, and Owen Cahill, the goalkeeper for Offaly. Daryl O'Donovan romped home. There was 1,100 votes, believe it or not.
Oh.
And Daryl O'Donovan romped home there. Any thoughts, Jamie? I know Owen Cahill played under you at college level.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for me, when you put that question out there, I suppose it was a case of I would find it hard to believe that there's anyone with any knowledge of hurling doesn't rate Daryl Donovan.
There are plenty of them out there.
Appropriately, so I suppose it's a hard question in that sense because it's kind of a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You put it out there that you say Daryl Donovan's the most underrated hurler in the country. He romps home with the pole and you're gloating as if you won.
This is such a hatchet job.
But what you've actually done is you've improved our position that, clearly Shane, 40% of people do rate him. So I'm not so sure about your gloating about that one. I think if Daryl Donovan came in with 5 or 6% of the poll, then you could start saying, see, I told you he was underrated.
These fools haven't the clue. Well, thanks for that, lads. You really did feel good about that. I hope Daryl Donovan's happy. He's
nice one, Niall.
He never wastes the ball, by the way. I think he is just class. He just the consummate link man, the Pirlo of hurling. Guardiola perhaps would appeal to Jamie. But
I'm not gonna heap that on him now.
Jamie, just to get to a little bit more of a serious subject as well. There was an article out by Martin Breheny. He was talking about the club situation and perhaps moving the All-Irelands back to September. Now that's certainly something that I wouldn't disagree with. I think the April club month certainly hasn't worked in Dublin, like as you know, Niall. Within the space of 2 weeks of the club starting, there was 2 games played and a quarter of the teams are already knocked out and a few more are more or less gone anyway. Not sure how that helps clubs develop. The idea of taking those couple of weeks back off the clubs again, I really disagree with. I think the whole thing needs to be started from scratch. This idea of the mutations and just slightly tweaking doesn't help. Jamie, you feel very strongly about this and this article and the idea of moving the All-Irelands back to September.
Yeah, I had a feeling I'd get myself into trouble with that, but it irked me. I won't lie. I just look, I can't speak for the other counties, but I know the club month in Limerick actually was quite successful. But we have a slightly different, I suppose, set up in terms of the county championship because nobody was going to get knocked out in that 2 months, but you were going to get 2 group games played. Which takes that bit of pressure off and kind of alleviates the pressure. For me, it's a non-runner putting the All-Irelands back to September. I think, you look to Clare and Waterford have both had county champions the last number of years. who've had to play a county final on a Saturday and a first round provincial on a Sunday. Tipperary couldn't enter a team into the Munster Club Football Championship in 2014, and yet the following year, I think it was the following year or 2 years later, Clonmel Commercials were Munster champions. So I think it's very unfair on the club player to think, and this notion that there's no clear evidence that pushing this back 2 weeks wouldn't support the club player. Of course it would support the club player. Why wouldn't it? I mean, if that goes forward 2 weeks, it stands to reason everything else comes forward a week or two. So obviously, I mean, the more time you have to play these games, then obviously that benefits the club player. I think, yes, it hasn't been perfect in some counties, but I suppose some of the problems in the Dublin Championship in football and hurling over the last number of years have been well documented too. And I suppose that's what you get when you have an association where fixtures aren't centralised. Every county runs their own ship. Some counties more successfully than others. And I think, I feel very strongly that taking back those 2 weeks for the inter-county game, yeah, it's grand for, we might get 2 more weeks printing articles in the Independent. We might get 2 more weeks out of the hurling show. Sorry, no, but we might get 2 more weeks, of this promotion that we're always talking about. But we have to kind of take a step back and say, who is the GAA for? Is it for general consumption, or is it for the people that we actually have playing the games right down from senior, premier intermediate, junior level? And if these guys aren't getting games, I mean, what's the point? It's absolutely ludicrous. Like, we're sitting in the house here in Limerick and chatting to 2 of the guys. One of them plays football for Milltown, Conor Cleary's twin brother, and the other plays football for Cratloe. And they're talking about, basically, if Clare get to this All-Ireland final, this is even with the All-Ireland final in August, mind you, and if the county championship final is a draw, they'll have to play on the Wednesday because they'll be out in the provincial championships that weekend. And that's even with these games pushed forward 2 weeks. So it is something I feel strongly about. The blood is starting to boil even a small bit talking about it.
That.
I just think it's terribly unfair because, it's... And believe me, look, I'm all for the inter-county game. We've had a brilliant summer. We've had an unbelievable summer. But this notion that we need 2 more weeks or we'll let soccer and rugby take over, for me, is just complete rubbish. It's dark ages stuff. Soccer and rugby is there. Rather than being afraid of the big bad wolf, let's actually just say, let's have a bit of self-confidence in the product that we're delivering. We've had the best summer of our lives. Let's not be insecure about it. You sort of said at the top there that we're feeling a bit smug about our hurling. Absolutely, let's feel smug about it. But let's let the club players feel smug about it in a couple of weeks too, and actually get to play games, because we've had a great summer. Let's not be so insecure, and let's just say, yeah, we've wrapped up our summer, 19th of August. We've had an unbelievable summer. Now let's let the club players have a crack and actually enjoy the game that they've spent the rest of the summer watching,
I just wish they'd prioritise the competitions that are most important. Is the league, which takes up about 3 months, all that important? Are quarter-finals in the league that important? Maybe we need a longer championship season with a bigger league-based system, and have the All-Ireland Championship run from basically March until July, and then the rest of the year is all... You'd actually have the stronger spotlight on the intercounty for longer, and then the club will get better because it's got a real proper period to prosper.
I think so, yeah. I'd agree with that. I think, look, the biggest irk for me is that, I suppose in Dublin we're lucky we know what our next game is, but you're talking to guys back at home, and for example, and you could be out in 2 weeks depending on how the game goes at the weekend, or a week, so that's very, very frustrating.
Just a final word to Tommy Walsh then, of course, as it is with most things. Here's Tommy's thoughts on it.
One thing I would say, Joe, is we were all looking at Dahi there. He was great on the game the other night, that great documentary, and how wonderful it was looking back at that. There was a guy on that from our own club, Dick of the Church, and he was 100 last March. So 100 years doesn't be long gone. We have a guy there that has lived through it. We need to be very, very careful. That game we had the 2 games we had last weekend were wonderful. But if we stay going, Joe, with the club structures that we have at the moment, right around the country, and you can bring up the stats, and I'm not blaming anyone, I blame myself, I'm a club man, I blame everyone, county boards, the GA themselves, we're all the one on this. But we need to sort out the clubs, because the last year anyway has been terrible, as regards, you don't know when you're playing, you don't know what's going on. I know there was new structure, so that's fair enough. We now know what's happening, but I would be a little bit worried, Joe, in that we're talking about giving lads breaks and maybe extending back out the All-Irelands to September. No problem. But let's remember, the GA communities, the communities now in our parishes, Joe, are revolving around the GA. That's what makes Ireland what it is. Like, you know, one time it was mass, or you go to the creameries and you go to, you know, maybe down at the local shop. But now with television and all this, it's really only with, say, sport. And in Ireland, it's the GA. So I would say there's a word of warning out there that if we want what we had last weekend, which was brilliant, and we're all raving about it, in 100 years' time, well then, let's look after the clubs.
100%, Tommy's on the ball there. We will get back to inter-county though, because we're heading for the sequel this weekend, Galway against Clare. The sequel is rarely as good as the first one, unless of course you talk about Terminator 2, which surpassed the original. A big thing that stood out to me is people were talking about how fit Galway were. They have Lucas Kurgenstein, they took him off Tipperary, the S&C coach, how amazingly fit that Galway now are. And yet when it came to extra time, surely Clare were the team that were kind of running away with it, looked fitter, missed hit 7 wides in the first half of extra time. They're the team that they were physically look stronger.
Yeah, they were definitely finishing stronger, that's for sure. You can't deny that. And I don't know, I think you look at the type of player Galway has as well though, Shane. Look, they're a bigger kind of guy, you know, like the Joe Coonies, they have a Burks, you know, the Garrett McInerney's, there's probably a lot more to carry as well. Look at it, and no doubt Lucas has done a fantastic job with them, and they are in good shape. I think Clare are a different type of team, different type of player. You have the Tony Kellys and the Colin Galvins, and they're obviously they're lighter players, but also they've pace as well. And I think in Croke Park, you know, when you have a lot of ground to cover as well, and that type of intense game, you know, that does take its toll. And you look at Clare's bench, you know, legs with, I think, Ian Galvin, you know, Jason McCarthy comes on and knocks over the point.
Aaron
Shanaher, you know, Conor McGrath. So
Davy Fitzgerald came on and
he was got legs on him. He came on. The first thing he did was take on David Burke and just, you know, dust them nearly. So they have a serious bench. And look, no doubt you have to give credit to Galway. They had 5 of their probably best players off on the sideline and still hung in there. So I put it down to, I don't know if it's fitness. I think Galway are kind of a different type of makeup of a team. They've kind of bigger players, and sometimes in a game like that, maybe it's hard to get around Croke Park.
Jamie, just to take up that point, what are your thoughts on that? And also, like, as soon as a team wins, all of a sudden the people that they have in their backroom team are considered gurus.
Yeah, what was it? The rugby team.
Don't tell Damien Hayes that.
No, it is. Look, it is obviously like, and I think, you know, as soon as the team loses, the fellas they have are frauds and they haven't a clue. And when a team wins, they're all the best.
You lost to Fitzgibbon this year, did you?
Sliced bread. Yeah, we lost Fitzgibbon now. We're on the way out now. We're on the way out. We're getting the boot. But no, it is like you're the best in the world when you win, and you're the worst in the world when you lose. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, you know. But like you know, like Niall said, you know, and again, it's no insult to Galway, like Damien Hayes took it up, but they are a physically bigger team than any of the 3 teams left. Probably Limerick are the only ones physically, will say, at the same pitch as them, maybe in certain areas of the field. So obviously there is that kind of bigger, I suppose, thing to carry as well. But you know, like we said as well, you know, and again, not to labour on the point because people are going to think I have it in for the provincials, but you know, like Niall said earlier on as well, you've got that, you know, that win where you're playing every week, and then all of a sudden you have this big gap, and I think it is quite hard to get back to that pitch there. And I think Galway maybe, you know, obviously they took off like a train, you know, but I suppose it's just a case that they took off so well, and it is hard to maintain that pitch when you're not used to it every week. And I think obviously they have the slightly bigger men that are going to feel that a small bit more. So I suppose it is something that, you know, I suppose like you said, you're talking about all the gurus when you win and the frauds when you lose, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, you know.
Niall, talk to us about the difference in the sweepers, because, you know, Galway went 1-7 to a point up. I think this Colin Galvin had moved back a sweeper just before that happened, but he was unbelievably effective, whereas Aidan Hart, who was at the other end, both players probably trying to position themselves on the defensive D, but Colin Galvin went to town, whereas because Clare were moving the ball up smartly up the field, it made it very difficult for Aidan Hart to actually get into the game, or Sean Loftus in extra time.
Yeah, look at it. I think if you look at the stats in the weekend, he'd 19 possessions compared to Aidan Hart's 4.
Yeah, in normal time alone,
time, which is phenomenal. Look at Colm Galvin. To me, was kind of, you know, when you look back at it now, he was the perfect sweeper, because at times he was like a third midfielder. When you look at the way he played, he was on the top of the D, but look at, he could cover left and right. He was. Now, I suppose Galway didn't help their case either, when at times there was probably maybe just Johnny Glynn on the edge of the square and nobody else around them. You had Conor Whelan out around midfield, half forward line floating in, and along with Conor Cooney. So I think next day Galway will have to maybe have a couple of more forwards closer to Johnny Glynn if he plays in full forward. But I think what Galvin did, I think he was an outlet for the puck outs, which maybe the first two he hit maybe didn't go so well, but then gave him an extra option. But his use of the ball was phenomenal. It was either through the lines, through Tony Kelly, and they could pick out John Conlon and Shane O'Donnell inside. And I suppose the way they lined up, they were literally in a straight line. There was space to the left.
Talk about the Clare attack.
Talk about the Clare attack with, you know, you John Conlon just in behind Shane O'Donnell in front of him, and you had space left or right, and that obviously gave Galvin and Tony Kelly and the rest of the Clare midfielders a chance to play a good ball into the guys, and it's very, very hard to defend that in Croke Park. But I again just go back to how effective Colm was. I think he's one, you know, yes, you can call him a sweeper, but he's to me, if there's such a thing as an attacking sweeper, maybe Pep does that with Man City, I don't know, but I think he can bring so much going forward, and yet then sit back and pick up that loose ball, which he did so effectively as well. You know, the score that comes to mind was the ball to Tony Kelly, who he just battered down in front of Galvin, and it was over the bar. It was you know, really good stuff to watch from Clare.
And as well, I think like Galvin was just always looking for Kelly, and I think Kelly found, like when Conlon is standing here at the square and you've got that very narrow attack in front of him, it means that the ball can be hit into Conlon on the right wing, on the left wing, and it's just, at one stage he collected a low ball came in, he collected it in front of him, Ian Galvin came on the loop, and Ian Galvin was actually holding the hurley upside down. I don't know if you know.
I saw that.
But he had the boss facing the wrong way. It was incredible. I also thought it was brilliant from the Clare management that they had used Jamie Shanahan as a spare man when they played against Clare or Limerick and hammered them in Munster. And they said, you know what, horses for courses here, Colm Galvin is the guy. The one question mark I'd have about Clare, and Jamie, you might take this one up, is should Clare have been more running at their men in extra time? Because Galway seemed to be fading, and instead Clare were hitting long balls and hitting silly wides from all angles.
Yeah, quite possibly, and I think it was what had got them into the game was that direct, kind of not direct ball, but actually just being direct in terms of when they got the ball and taking the man on. You know, Niall spoke about moving the ball through the lines. That's probably why the sweeper system suited Clare a lot more than it suited Galway, in the sense that, you know, Clare are more inclined to play that way anyway. You know, you go back to the days of Davy Fitz and Paul Kinnerk, they were playing that similar game plan anyway. So it was very much a fall back into, we'll say, into their old habits in that sense anyway. So they were very comfortable playing that game plan. And I think you're right. Like, I think, look, as Brian Cody says, every game kind of takes on a life of its own. And in that sense, you'd be very quick to kind of, you know, you wouldn't be too quick to slate the Clare forwards for the way they played, because in extra time things get a bit broken and they get a bit small, a bit panicked. But I think, you know, certainly just that more methodical kind of play from Clare, it suits them. You know, it's probably in this team's DNA growing up. You know, they played under Paul Kinnerk for 3 years at under 21. You know, a huge proportion of them. You know, a lot of them would have played 3-4 years ago when they were playing this kind of game plan. And I think, you know, it's funny, like, you know, you mentioned that Colm kind of plays almost like an attacking sweeper. The reason I thought he was so suited to that role is because anytime he played midfield under us with Mary I, and we had him for more years than he'll admit, but anytime we had Colm with us with Mary I, his natural game at midfield is actually he drops in behind the half back line, and the amount of ball he generally gets on from midfield is crazy. And that's why when I was watching on telly for a while, it took a bit of time to actually figure out that he was actually playing a sweeper, because it's so natural to him to play from that deep position and then get on ball and ping it left and right. Whereas maybe, I suppose, you know, the Galway players were a bit less accustomed to that. So yeah, look, to kind of wrap it up and go around, I think that move that more or less got Clare back into the game, and that change in style of play suited them so much. And I suppose it was a shame for them that they kind of got a small bit lost in extra time and went that small bit more direct, when at times they would have been better to kind of stick to what they were doing, which was playing through those lines and kind of running Galway around, especially after Gearóid McInerney went off. We had heard that Dahi Burke was carrying a knock as well leading into the game. So I suppose the longer the game went on, any sort of small kind of question mark that there was over him there would have gotten bigger,
So it's all about what changes for the sequel now. We know Gearóid McInerney is looking unlikely to play. Joe Canningway here got a smack on the knee, a bit of a nerve kind of reaction to it. Apparently he's going to be okay. Davy Burke. I actually wonder if Davy Burke was bad enough that he had to go off, if Conor Whelan had to go off, if Joe had to go off. I mean, can they be okay in a week? Maybe they can, maybe they can't, but you have to worry about that. Now, the thing about Joe Canning is, like, he's not a guy who's going to get stuck into your rucks, but he is going to always be floating around, and if the ball goes into his hand, best of luck trying to get it off him. I wonder, with Johnny Glynn, who played full forward and then played on the wing on Shane O'Morey, and that's obviously going to be something that Galway are going to look at again. Do you look at the idea of, let's say Glynn starts on the wing, let's put Conor Cleary on him and let's put Shane O'Morey. Now maybe he's not the ideal man marker for him, but as an example, he's the man marker and you're just not to be interested in the ball at all at any stage. Maybe even Jamie Shanahan, if you like. Your only task today is to just stand on Joe Canning and hopefully just try and frustrate him, because Canning wants to play on a guy who wants to do hurling too, because that'll allow him to express himself. And Conor Cleary is the best physical matchup that Clare might have for Johnny Glynn.
Yeah, quite possibly. I suppose Clare will look at how effective Johnny Glynn was on the wing when he came out and won 2 or 3 balls, created scores. So it's something that I'm sure they'll be aware of. Look, quite possibly. Are you taking away Shane O'Morey's a kind of attacking prowess when he goes up the field and
he was a bit headless with the ball.
Yeah, he did miss 2. He did miss a couple of scores. Look, another they might go over. Look, it's quite possibly what Joe Canning wants to do is go out deep and get on ball and spread the ball in or get some scores, and he got a couple of good scores. I suppose the ball just been throughout the last day, and it was over the bar, and no better man Joe Canning to nail them. So quite possibly it could be something that they look at. I'd be interested to see. Joe Canning is not bad under the high ball either, Shane. So,
no, he's not.
So it's certainly an option, but I think what I suppose Clare's biggest concern will be what they do when Johnny Glynn comes out, and maybe it is Colin Cleary to move across on him.
What about John Conlon then? Because he's going to be matching up again with Dahi Burke, you'd imagine, unless there's an injury. I thought it was very noteworthy towards the latter end of the game. Aaron Shanahan was isolated inside with John Hanbury, and Conlon and Dahi Burke were a little bit away from goal, and you saw obviously ended up with Aaron Shanahan snapping the ball over John Hanbury. And we've seen in the past the trouble that Seamus Callan caused on the full forward line of Galway as well. Jamie, do you think that Aaron Shanahan might go in and try and isolate John Hanbury when he's brought on at some point?
I think so. I think that has to be a definite plan. I mean, we spoke about it last week on OTBM. I was actually just wondering, would Clare try and do something like that where they'd take Conlon and try and drag him out to the corner and see could they isolate somebody a bit smaller if Dahi Burke followed him? So could they isolate somebody, not that John Hanbury's small, but maybe somebody who's not as strong in the air as Dahi Burke is? And I suppose it was funny that that it was Aaron Shanahan coming in to win that ball in the edge of square, where John had kind of maybe cleared out and come back in late so that Dahi Burke wasn't able to get on it. I think it's something that as a Clare management you have to look at in terms of, I don't think Aaron Shanahan will be fit enough to start, and it's remarkable that he's even back as quick as he is from that cruciate ligament injury. But I think it's definitely a tactic they have to look at. And just look, just one thought just on the last thing you just spoke about as well, in terms of Conor Cleary going out to Johnny Glynn and Shane O'Morey man marking Joe Canning. I think the massive kind of kernel of that debate is whether Clare go with the sweeper or not, because if they do, then they can afford to man mark everyone, and you would nearly always say if you're playing a sweeper, everyone else has to man up, so at least you can man mark Canning. But the problem with man marking Joe at centre forward, if you don't go with a sweeper, is that he's going to drift into those pockets like you talked about, and you're going to leave a massive hole in front of Conor Whelan or somebody like that. And I just don't think, bar Jack Brown, I don't think the Clare inside backs have been dealing quite well with that space, especially they struggled very early on. Before that move was made, they struggled massively with the 2 inside forwards that Galway had. So I think, man marking Joe Canning is only really an option if you do go with that sweeper,
And just before we let you go, Jamie, what are your thoughts on this game? Who's going to win?
I'm going to go for Galway, because I think, they're kind of like, they're like Kerry of old. They're like, playing Kilkenny. You get one crack at it. You rarely beat them in a replay. And I just think, I think Thurles as well will probably suit Galway a small bit more than it'll suit Clare. So I'm going to lean towards Galway by 3 or 4 points.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Jamie. We're going to come back with Leon Blanche of Boyle Sports just to tip up the game. But in the meantime, I also spoke with Paddy Maher after the Cork and Limerick game the other day, and here are his thoughts. Paddy, Cork and Limerick, there was 42 players used, 68 scores. Like, how would you try and sum that up?
Yeah, Shane, it's hard to get your head around it again. Similar to the game and yesterday even there, unbelievable stuff. 10-12 minutes to go, you felt Limerick were gone. Cork were heading to an All-Ireland final, but again Limerick pulled it back, and they just absolutely drove on from there, and in the end they're deserving winners, you could say.
What do you think changed that Limerick were able to turn it around? Was it some of the switches that were made by Limerick or Cork, or what?
Definitely the substitutions for Limerick made an awful difference. Peter Casey, Dowling, Pat Ryan, all contributed immensely to the cause, and they definitely changed the thing around. And I just felt then that Cork were taking off the lads that were bringing energy to the team. I know maybe they were getting tired or carrying injuries, but I felt that the likes of Kingston, Meade, the likes of Kearney were motoring well, but obviously they could have been carrying knocks, whatever. But the energy kind of went from the forward line then, and I think that kind of suited Limerick, helped them bring it back into the game. But again, Limerick, the panel showed a lot there now, and I suppose it means that 15 players start the game, but it's what's coming afterwards is the important part, and that showed up that more or less got Limerick into an Ireland final.
Cork came into the game as Munster champions, but they'd drawn a couple of games beforehand. They drew again today, so there's just such fine margins between all the teams, isn't there?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I suppose just never so many draws in the championship season. I suppose the new format allows for all them draws to mean something, but again, Cork are fierce unlucky, like we were talking earlier on about Patrick Horgan. The semi-finals he's lost, and a player of his calibre must be very disappointing. And look, again, fine margins, would a replay have been different? I don't know, but at the end of the day, these are the rules and these are the formalities that are put in place, and fair play to Limerick, they're in the final now.
And is there anyone in particular that impressed you with Limerick? Because even picking out a man of the match, straight away after the game, it's pretty hard to pick one out. It's just good team performance.
It just feels like the game has gone on all day. There's been sectors where players have stood out, and you look at, I suppose, Grode Hegarty did a lot of hard work there, throughout the game, and usually he's been called ashore after 50-55 minutes, and they're bringing in a bit of more energy. But he stood out today all day for me as well, for the work rate he done for the team. Aaron Gillan was good. He could have easily had 3 goals, and again, Graham Mulcahy had a great 60 minutes, 70 minutes in normal time. And then again, the subs, Shane Dowling came in, used all of the experience, drove him forward. Peter Casey brought loads of energy, and that was the kind of difference in the end.
Shane Dowling definitely stepped over the line for the penalty as well. So he's a little bit lucky to get away with that. I mean, delighted for him, because he's the sort of player who wears his heart in his sleeve. And even in interviews, he's kind of very much puts it all out there. But he probably did step over the line, didn't he?
Yes, we were nearly close enough to it, but look, again, fine margin we talked about. It's the same thing as the match going to extra time with someone by a pint or 2 pints. So fine margin, but a fabulous finish. He obviously, that was Nash's probably weaker side to switch over to Hurley. So great finish, and again, he really showed tremendous leadership there in the last extra time, last few minutes in normal time.
Limerick used 22 players today. A lot of the time you hear managers going on about the importance of the panel, and at times it feels like it's just lip service being paid to guys who are doing all the training but are never going to really see the field. It's pretty much, it's different with them because they have such a spread of quality. Yeah,
you see what it meant to the subs coming in there, even getting scores. You were really pumped up, and they knew they could make a difference. And the amount of players they brought in, I think they finished with 14 because they'd nearly them all used. And they were all just willing to put their body in the line for the cause. Will O'Donoghue who came in there, David Reedy, Nash, they all came in and all contributed something, whether it was a pint or something defensive, So I suppose that's, you put in all the training for that, and no one really sees a lot of it, but there's people seeing it there today, and what it meant to the Limerick crowd afterwards there, and they're going to be a fair force to stop in that All-Ireland final now.
Clare against Galway. I know you've just been wrapped up in that particular game right there, but what's your sense for the replay there?
Yeah, it is, again, I think it just comes down to, but the Galway players being fit for the game is going to be massive. And but again, here, no one ever thought you would see Limerick Clare Ireland final, and it's very, very there's a good chance that could happen, you know. And but again, if Limerick if Galway get their full team in the pitch, I still believe that they might have enough just to get over Clare. But look, the way this championship has gone, who knows, we could have extra time again next weekend.
And were there any tingles watching that there, knowing how close Tipperary were, drawing with Cork this year, seeing Clare last night, the fact that Jake Morris hit the post, it could have been a 7-point lead, and I mean, we, at all looking at it thinking, geez, we should be out there?
Not really, to be honest, Shane, because we weren't just up to scratch this year, and I think that them teams are playing a level above what we were at this year, even 2 levels above. So you can really no qualms out there. Obviously, you have tingles there looking at it in the crowd afterwards, and lucky enough to experience days like that. And again, you'd be kind of chomping at the bit, man, to get back into them days, because that's what it's all about out there now. And them players going to dress them down, the Limerick lads have an unbelievable 3 weeks to look forward to now, where they can probably enjoy tonight, but get back down to recovery tomorrow and back in training Tuesday, and really look forward to an All-Ireland final. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, these games will be remembered for years to come, but people will ever remember who wins the All-Ireland final in 2018, and that's the main prize now for Limerick and the main aim.
Cheers, Paddy.
All right.
A born and bred Galway man, how much do you hate Clare?
Well, look, I'd be from the other side of the county, be more the Offaly side, but I was sitting there in the stand the other day watching the game, and I was beside 3 Clare fanatics, and the one thing for certain, they're all stopping off in Cork for a pint from my home when I used to work, but they were telling me the story. One, they were telling me the story that they obviously look to be great mates around Tubber and Gorton, Baha and those places, so they have a lot of friends on either side of the border. But I think it was 2013 when Clare got to the final. They went over, their mate went on holidays. I think he said they're from Baha, went on holiday anyway, and the boys went over and painted his house yellow and blue.
That's the stuff.
So when he came back, he seen this yellow and blue house and wondering what was going on. So the boys thought it was a great laugh. I don't think the friend was too impressed though at the end of it.
Wouldn't imagine so.
I wouldn't imagine
so. On the line now we have Leon Blanche from Boy Sports. Leon, how are you doing?
Shane, good evening. How are you?
Not too bad. Looks like you're over in Galway.
We're in Galway. We're at the races, Shane. It's absolutely pelting down with rain all day.
It looks like it. Are the locals confident about beating Clare on Saturday?
Not overly confident, to be fair. I've spoke to a few Galway lads who'd be massive hurling fans, and they're a bit worried about Clare, and probably rightly so. A couple of big players in Galway are carrying knocks. Looks like McInerney's not going to play. I don't see any value backing Galway at 7-4 on, but we are of course given a fantastic offer to offtheball.com/boilsports where you can get Galway at 10-1 to beat Clare. But I have a fancy for Clare. I think they'll really relish this replay. They hung in there after a first half that probably looked as if Galway could have put the game to bed in the first half, but Clare stuck in there. They've got a young mobile team, and I think if you're just looking at the match odds straight, Clare are 15-8 to beat Galway, and they're getting a 2-point head start on the spread. And I think them 2 points, Clare +2 at 11-10. If I was having a bet on it, that's probably the way I'd go.
Clare +2, 11-10, Niall. I'm all over that.
Yeah, they've every chance. I think coming up to it, like they'll have huge confidence from the last day, and I think. I think they'll be walking out Croke Park thinking, like we're thereabouts, and it won't be easy.
It's the final round of the Super 8s this weekend as well. You're Galway. I'm sure you're a massive football man. Are you under it all as well?
I'd watch it. Yeah, I'd support it. Yeah, I'd watch it there at the Dubs and Galway. Sure, look at it'll be a big game for Galway and Monaghan, and I think the Dubs is a bit of a dead rubber game. So
they have a dead rubber against Roscommon, but Galway against Monaghan. Galway are already through no matter what happens. But if they don't win, or if they lose, basically they'll end up against Dublin. And Monaghan need a draw or a win, and they're through. What way do you see this going, Leon?
I suppose, Shane, I thought Monaghan really slipped up against Kerry. They were the better side. They kicked an awful lot of bad wide. To give away such a late goal. To lose that win that would have qualified Galway and Monaghan with 4 points, Kerry would have been out. But Monaghan, they're going to go down to Galway now as the underdog. But the talk in Galway is that they're going to rest a lot of players. They're going to make 5 or 6 changes now. If they do that, I think they could be susceptible to getting beaten by Monaghan. And if Monaghan go down there with the same start that they did against Kerry, they came out and they attacked. They've got one of the best forwards in the business at the moment, Monaghan up front. He's very, very difficult in terms of trying to mark him. But I'm looking at the match odds, and I think Monaghan at 2-1. If Galway make all those changes, it could be a big price. And as you rightly said, you would have thought that Galway would have wanted to try and avoid Dublin until the final. But I think Monaghan at 2-1 will be a decent bet.
What did you say the draw was, Leanne?
The draw in this game is a 6-1 chance. A lot closer than normal, because as you rightly pointed out, if it's a draw, both sides make it through to the semi-final.
That's interesting. Would you Galway people be that conniving?
Yeah. I was actually chatting to John Dillney Friday night, and he was kind of very impressed with Galway, and kind of really impressed with how aggressive they've become and nearly cynical they've become. And you never know, sure, both teams will go away happy if they draw a match Saturday evening.
They're
in the
dirty
stadium.
efforts at this stage, aren't they? They're filthy. Kerry against Kildare as well. Leon, it's probably last chance saloon for Eamon Fitzmaurice. He can't afford to lose this game. He can't really afford to get knocked out.
Well, you know what, Shane, it might make a blind bit of difference if they win, if the result in the other game goes against them. But I'm surprised that Kildare are being given 8 points. I know it's a dead rubber game for Kildare, but I was hugely impressed with them against Galway when they went down to 14 men. They showed a lot of character, they showed a lot of fight, a lot of determination. They seem to be a squad that's together. I think Kerry will win this match, but I don't see them covering that spread of 8 points. I think there's a lot of problems with Kerry football. They don't seem to know what type of tactics suits them best. It was a long ball in. The star got the flick on Donaghy onto one of the best young kids I've ever seen play Gaelic football in Clifford. But I think Kildare will go down there and they'll give them a go. They won't beat Kerry, I don't feel, in Killarney, but I think they'll come over under the spread. So Kildare +8 for me would be a very decent bet.
I think we'll have to agree to differ there, because there's no Daniel Flynn. I think Kildare have mentally checked out. I think they're going to get beaten with a little bit to spare. What do you think, Niall?
I think look at, we don't know Daniel Flynn, he's a key player. I think they'll struggle with nothing to play for. Yeah,
Dublin against Roscommon then is the last game. Leon, I'm sure you're expecting a handy win, even if Dublin aren't playing for anything this weekend.
Yeah, well look, come here, there's no point in even talking about that. The Dubs will hammer us. There's a big game on up at Blanche today. A huge Donegal taking on Tyrone. And yes, Tyrone put in a much better performance against Dublin and Oma. It was a very, very narrow pitch. But I think you've got to look at Donegal's home record in Ballybuffet. It's very, very strong indeed. And for that reason, Donegal are 11-8, Tyrone are 5-6, and the draw is 13-2. I would have to go with Donegal at 11-8 at home to see off Tyrone. It's going to be a physical encounter, as the Dublin against Tyrone was. But I just think there's not a lot between these sides. Home advantage, 11-8. I'll go with Donegal to see off Tyrone.
Thank you very much for that, Leon. Enjoy the rest of the Galway Festival. I'll be out there tomorrow. Might run into you. You never know.
All the best, Shane. And don't forget, for all our specials, offtheball.com/BoilSports.
Thank you very much, Leon. Yeah, so Galway, Clare, final word. You were actually making a point about Davy Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I reckon he could. I think he was very impressive.
The wing back now, not the
wing back, not the goalkeeper. I think he might start, maybe in place of Cotton Malone, and look, it might be a case he might go back at wing back and on the puck out to Johnny Glynn goes out there. So it could be an option. Clare could throw at the weekend.
But that's actually replacing a fairly defence-minded player in Cathal Malone with an attack-minded player, no matter where he's playing, in David Fitzgerald.
Yeah, but if you're solely looking to kind of have an aerial battle, I suppose Davy Fitzgerald is probably a guy that might do that for you. And look at, who knows, it'll depend if Jamie made a point if Clare go up the sweeper, which I think they will. That'll have an influence too. In saying all that, I do think Galway have more to learn from this. I would agree with Jamie's point that they'll maybe get over the line by 3 or 4 points. It will depend on how they deal with the sweeper, but I think they'll have to push up on the Clare puckouts, and I just think they'll have to maybe play a couple more guys closer to goal, and if they can use the ball a bit better than they have done, I think I'll give them every chance.
To be fair, actually, Nicky Quaid got a huge amount of plaudits last weekend for that incredible interception against Seamus Hardys, if you want to call it that. I think Donald Toohey didn't get enough credit, and I don't think he ever really has.
Another underrated player, Shane.
Yeah, indeed, maybe so underrated.
Underrated, exactly.
So, like, he made an unbelievable save from Conor Cooney early in the second half. Absolutely fantastic. His puck outs were great. We got a couple of messages in as well. I'm only after copying them there now. Lads, I didn't make the game on Sunday, but I had tears in my eyes when Limerick won. I'm too old to get to games anymore, but the Nicky Quaid save was as good as I've seen in my lifetime. Aiming in a dare. He's after putting me right on that one. And then another message. I think Limerick would prefer to play a wounded Galway in the final. Clare will have their tails up big time if they come through this on Sunday. Annie in Ennis. Yeah, who would Limerick prefer to play?
I was chatting to the captain of the 73 team, Limerick team.
Eamon Grimes.
I was talking to him at the weekend, and I think he said about playing Clare in the final. Love to play Clare in the final if you beat them, but losing to Clare in the final, you'd never get over that one.
That would be painful.
That would be hard to listen to.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all we have time for today. Just a reminder that we have reporters all around the grounds this weekend. We have Mike Quirk at Kerry and Kildare. We have Dahi Regan at Galway, Clare, and we have Ross Munnelly at Dublin and Roscommon. That's it for the Hurling Show this weekend. You can go and get us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, whatever way you like it. There's more analysis from Off the Ball PM this evening at 7 o'clock.